Hi everybody, this is Tamara from Moogly and I am here today with you live so we can talk about chainless starting first stitches. Kind of a confusing term and I had a really hard time actually coming up with the title for this video and blog post. Basically, long story short, if you have followed my videos before for the chainless starting double crochet, or if you followed my patterns where I use that stitch, you'll most often see me using it either in a magic circle or second row and beyond. The one thing I haven't really used it for is that very first stitch in the very first row after you've made your chain. And I thought about this long and hard, and I was trying to think, is that essentially foundation stitches? And it's not, because if you make that foundation stitch, you still have to make those stitches across. I wanted to be able to make a long chain and then just use that standing stitch in the first stitch without having to use foundation stitches. So with a little bit of practice, I came up with it. I'm going to go ahead and get the video up here so I can make sure to read any comments or questions as we go. So I haven't actually launched into it yet here. There we go. Okay, everything is up and running, it looks like. I hope our internet holds steady. Always a question. But let's go ahead and switch to the overhand camera and look at the couple little swatches that I've already made. Okay, right here in the white, and for this, by the way, I'm using Bernat Maker Home Deck and a US K 6.5 millimeter hook. This one is by Susan Bates. I love these ones with the bamboo handle, but I like using this yarn because it has great stitch definition, so we can really see what we're dealing with here. Now, this is just 2 rows of double crochet, and you can see here, I chained across, I skipped those first 3 chains, and then I worked back into it as the top of the double crochet. This is a pretty standard way to start a row of double crochet, right? When you've got double crochet for your first row, you're going to skip those. If it was treble crochet, you might skip the first 4 stitches. Just depends on the height of the stitch. This one, on the other hand, instead of skipping those stitches, I went ahead and worked the chainless starting stitch in that as that very first stitch of row 1. And that's something I have not demoed before. So reader request, today seems like a good day for that demo. So of course, we're just talking about the first stitch of the first row here, so it doesn't matter at all how many stitches you chain or anything like that. And the reason I'm talking about this with double crochet specifically is because that personally I find if I'm starting my first row and it's single crochet or half double crochet, I really prefer just a chain 1 turning chain. For the half double crochet, I tend to pull it up a little bit higher than for the single crochet, but I feel like that gives me a really nice finished edge. However, once we get into those double crochets and taller, that's the part I don't like right there. So I've got a few chains here made. Like I say, that part doesn't matter. We just want to get this standing stitch in our first stitch. So normally if we were going to make double crochets, we would either skip the 2 chains closest to the hook and not count those as our first stitch and work into that third one, or we would skip those first 3 chains and count that last chain made as the top of our double crochet. But we want to do something a little different. We don't want that gap. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead. We've just made our chains, and we're going to go ahead and pull that stitch up about to the height of a double crochet. If you haven't made any stitches yet in that yarn, you might have to play a little bit with the size of that loop, but it needs to be long enough that you can anchor it here with your finger and wrap it around your hook. And that should land you right about back ready to come into that chain right there, that very last chain you made. So if you pull your loop up too high and you say, oh my gosh, it's all the way back here, then it's too big. If it's, too short, you might really struggle to get it all the way around your hook. So those will be your clues right there. Just about the height of a double crochet, maybe just a hair higher if needed be to be able to wrap it around your hook. So like I say, we pull up that last loop on the hook to the height of a double crochet or treble crochet or whatever stitch you want to make. Right now we're making a double crochet. Secure the top of that loop on top of the hook with my forefinger here. And I'm going to just wrap that loop itself right around my hook. I've still got it secured under that finger. Then we've got our very last chain made right there. I'm going to go right into that chain. It's not always going to be easy because we've got a lot of tension on that stitch. So I'm going to probably want to use a sharper hook like I've got here. There we go. And depending on the yarn, it'll be easier or harder to get in there. Let's see, I think it wants to split. So you know what? I think what's happened is that last chain, because I've showing back and forth has gotten a little tight. So if that happens to you, we'll just remake that last chain. There we go. Now I'm going to make sure to hold that chain open a little bit as I pull up that loop so it doesn't get any smaller. Secure the top, yarn over with the loop, and now I've got a lot more space to get into that chain. There we go. So I just put my hook right in that chain, yarn over, carefully pull up that loop, yarn over, pull through the loop and behind the wound over loop, yarn over, and pull through 2 to finish the stitch. So now I have put a chainless starting double crochet in that very last chain we made. Let's do that one more time, and then we'll try and do it with a treble crochet. So like I say, I think you really want to make sure that that last chain you make doesn't get pulled too tight because it's going to be really hard to get back into. So I like to sometimes secure those with my other hand. We'll pull that loop up again to the height of a double crochet. Secure that loop on the hook so it doesn't go anywhere with the top of that finger. Yarn over with the loop itself. Go into that very last chain you made. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through that loop and behind the yarn over. Then we can finally release that last loop as we yarn over and pull through 2. And from there, then of course, you can just continue on with whatever your pattern says, whether that's double crochets or skipping stitches. This is a great method if you want to avoid that turning chain, but foundation stitches won't work for that first row because, like I say, you might have chains and skips. It might be a lace pattern, but this is a great alternative for that. And then you can see here, you just work back into the top of it as you come back for that second row, and it really does look so much more, you'd really have to sit there and look at it and say, oh wait, that's a little bit different. But it really does look a lot more like a double crochet, obviously, than just skipping those chain 3s. So I am going into the back bump of the chain. Whenever I work into the chain, I prefer personally to work into that back bump of the chain. I really like the finished edge that it gives me at the bottom. I've got 2 loops there, so if I need to come back and work a border, it just goes on a lot nicer. And if I don't work a border, especially, it gives me, I think, a much nicer finished edge to my project there at the bottom. So that's something over the years I've just adjusted to. I've started going into the back hump for just about everything, at least for this first row. Sometimes in later rows it doesn't work. But let's pull these out for a second and let's do a taller stitch. I'm going to make that last chain again so that it isn't real tight on me. There we go. And then, since we're making a treble crochet, we're going to need to pull up that much higher. We'll try this. We'll see how this works. We're going to secure the top of the loop and yarn over twice. 1, twice. Oh, not quite long enough. Couldn't quite get there. We need to pull that up a little bit higher yet. Once and twice. There we are. Then we go into that last chain, just as before. Yarn over, pull up that loop. Yarn over, pull through 2. Not really through 2, but you're pulling sort of behind 2, through 1 and behind the next one. Finally, work it off down to those last 2 loops. And now you've got your chainless starting treble crochet as the very first stitch of the first row. So you can just keep going as you get to taller stitches. Of course, you'll need to pull that loop up taller and taller, and it gets a little bit trickier. Sometimes still when I make one of these standing stitches, I don't really love it and I end up having to pull it back out and redo it. But I think that when you look at the finished results, make sure I'm looking at this one the right way here. That's the great thing about it. I have to stop and look at it for a minute and be like, wait, which one even is it? Because it looks so much like all the other stitches here. Right there. So there it is. There's that one. Took me a minute. There is our chainless starting double crochet worked into that very last chain made. So like I say, this is a pretty quick and easy one, but just a really great way to upgrade your stitching. If you're making double crochets, whoops, or treble crochets or any taller stitch, might take a couple tries, but you're going to be, I think, a lot happier with your finished project if your first row looks like that rather than like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tip. That's it for today. A pretty simple one. I was live earlier on Facebook. We can go ahead and come back to the other camera, I think. But I was live earlier today on Facebook. So if you go to the link in the description, you'll get links both to supplies I just used to demo this, as well as the other versions of the chainless starting double crochet, worked into a magic ring and things like that. I've linked out to those tutorials as well as my free upcoming Michael's classes. So I hope you'll check that out too. And I hope you have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you all so much for joining me, and have a great day. Bye, everybody.